Hello and welcome to the City of Good Sports podcast. I'm your host, Richard Miller. Happy holidays to everyone. This is officially my last episode of 2025 before the new year. And I just want to say it's been a while since I recorded my last episode, and I apologize to everyone. It's been 20 days. I believe I've been at work probably 15 or 16 of those days, and 2 of the days I had off were Christmas Eve and Christmas. But I got to start holding myself more accountable and upload at a more consistent pace. But since I've last recorded, and this is how long it's been, there's been 3 Bills games. And there's been a common theme in all of them, particularly the Patriots and the Eagles. The Browns game, it was an ugly win. It was a win nonetheless, but it was a slugfest. So I'm not really going to even get into that one as much. But one thing in common with both the Patriots and the Eagles game was that the Bills waited all game to show up. And this is a consistent problem that they've had. They just fall out flat in the first half. They don't show up in the first half. I don't know how to fix this issue, but it's getting concerning because you're not always going to come back and win, as we saw with the Eagles game. Probably one of the most heartbreaking losses I've ever seen. The Bills wow me with their ability to lose in ways that you've never seen before. Let's not show up for the first 3 quarters and start playing in the last 7 minutes. And these last 7 minutes, let's get 2 touchdowns. Mind you, they're down 13, but we're not converting on either of the extra points. The first one, the extra point is going to get blocked, and then we're going to try to go for a 2-point conversion for the win, even when 2 extra points would have been the win in the first place. But we're going to fail this 2-point conversion. Josh Allen's going to completely miss Khalil Shakir. And now we let the Patriots win the division. Patriots completely whooped the Jets, so there's a good chance they could have won the division anyway. But let's say the Dolphins come up clutch for us next week. We have no idea if that happens now because we failed to show up for 53 minutes. I shouldn't say we, because it's really the offense. The defense did their job. The offense did not show up for 53 out of the 60 minutes. And this receiving core is one of the worst in the league, especially when Kincaid is out. Shout out to Brandon Cooks. I doubted him. He played terrible for the first couple of weeks that we signed him. But this game was the first time we've had 100 yards from a receiver this season since Keon Coleman in week 1. We haven't had a 100-yard performance by a single receiver in this entire season since week 1. That is pathetic. And you saw some Superman efforts. You saw Shavers pitch it out to Ty Johnson. That was an incredible play call. Honestly, Shavers made some huge plays in this game, but you never even know if the Bills could unlock Tyrell Shavers because Joe Brady uses him almost exclusively as a blocker. The only reason they had to convert on 4th down was because they had that 3rd down play where they threw a little screen pass behind the line of scrimmage, got completely sniffed out by the Eagles D-line, which is one of the best D-lines in the NFL. This is what gets me about the fact that this is the first time a receiver has had 100 yards since week 1. And it's specifically wide receivers. I know that Kincaid has had a couple of 100-yard games. Is the fact that, 1, they refused to play Keon Coleman. They knew Keon Coleman, when they drafted him, had issues with separation. There's no way the scouting team did not know that. But from what I've seen, there's a complete lack in confidence of Sean McDermott of Keon Coleman because he's missed a couple of practices. He refuses to play him. And from what it seems, I can't speak entirely on what goes on behind the scenes. There seems to be a lack of desire to develop Keon Coleman, even though this is a guy that's only in his 2nd year in the NFL. And I'm sure they knew these issues going into the season, and yet Brandon Beane goes on WGR, calls in, and tells them to stop bitching about wide receivers. They could have easily drafted someone like Luther Burden. They drafted TJ Sanders 2 picks behind where Luther Burden was taken. They could have easily traded up and drafted Luther. But instead, they drafted TJ Sanders, who's an obvious D tackle, who they refused to play at D tackle. They line him up on the edge. So there are some very clear issues with this Buffalo Bills team in management, in coaching, and as much as I respect what Bean and McDermott have done for this organization, they are not without their faults. And quite honestly, they deserve more of the blame than someone like Josh Allen or James Cook, who's working tirelessly to make this offense as great as it is. And the reason I single out James Cook specifically is this is the rushing leader of the NFL. This has been our best player in several games. He's the rushing leader of the NFL. And prior to the season, they did not want to pay him this money, even though you saw when you pay running back money, good things happen, i.e. Saquon, i.e. Derrick Henry. But yet, there was an entire section of Bills Mafia that sided with Brandon Beane and the front office in this dispute over money because, in a way, they're traumatized by Stephon Diggs wanting out and his character concerns, and they kind of unintentionally placed that onto James Cook. They said, oh, Ray Davis and Ty Johnson could carry the load. But at the end of the day, it was a refusal for Brandon Beane to pay his players what they were worth. They stalled it out for as long as they possibly could. You saw rumors of him selling his house in Orchard Park. So when you see stuff like that, and you see where they're at now, all this stuff with James Cook and Brandon Beane bitching on WGR, it looks bad now. It's aged terribly. I think the main issue with the front office above all is that they're prideful to a fault. And they don't want to put their pride aside for the sake of getting Josh Allen some weapons or going against the system and culture that they've established. And it's a great culture, to their credit. But it also gets tiring. The bringing in aging guys is getting predictable and tiring. They just brought in Brandon Cooks and Matt Judon, and I have to give Brandon Cooks his props that game because he deserves it. But they are obsessed with bringing in older veterans rather than young guys that have potential and could help the team. They're scared to make that big splash. Honestly, both in the draft and in free agency and in trades. They brought in Gabe Davis, who's probably about the oldest 26-year-old ever, but it's because he knows the system. This receiving core has a ton of issues. And if they don't either draft a receiver in one of their top 2 picks or trade for a star receiver, then I really am starting to question this front office. Now, when we go to the playoff picture now, we're currently in the 7th seed. We have the same record as both the Texans and the Chargers. We play the Jets in our final game. It's our final game at Highmark Stadium before going to the new stadium. Probably not playing in Highmark in the playoffs. We might, but we're probably not. But as it lines up, we're the 7th seed right now. We play the Patriots in the first round. Will they rest Josh Allen and their starters because it's against the Jets? That's what I'm wondering, because, yeah, you don't want them to get injured, but you're still playing for seeding. Even though you haven't won the division, Patriots have clinched the division, there's still a chance you could get up to the 5 seed. And I would much rather play the Steelers in my first game than I would the Patriots. And I'm sorry, I know I have my friend's a Steelers fan. He's watching the podcast. But I just trust the Bills to beat the Steelers. I trust them to beat the Jaguars more than the Patriots. And I say that, knock on wood, because the Jaguars have had our number in a lot of recent games. But we haven't played them this season. So we haven't seen this version of the Jaguars. We haven't seen Liam Cohen's Jaguars. But I would still be at the very least playing for seeding, because this Jets game could be a trap game. That's a very Bills thing and a very Jets thing to happen, for the Jets to beat the Bills in the last game mess up their draft position, and now the Bills are locked at that 7 seed. So at least play them like the first quarter, see how it goes, get a temperature check, let Josh Allen play for the fans in his final game at Highmark Stadium. Let the Bills get a win in their final game at Highmark Stadium. That would be great. As we enter this final week of the NFL, Bills-Jets is pretty low on the totem pole of important games. It's obviously going to be the one I'm watching for obvious reasons. But we do have 2 division titles at play here, with both the teams playing each other. We have Steelers versus Ravens for the AFC North, and then we have Bucks versus Panthers for the NFC South. These games are monumental. Every other team has clinched. The Chiefs are already out. Lions are already out. They're in the NFC. It doesn't matter that much to the Bills overall. But if we could go without the Chiefs and the Ravens, if the Steelers are able to win here, I feel much better about our odds. I am honestly most scared of the Houston Texans. But as it stands, we have unequivocally the best quarterback and the best running back of any team in the AFC. Certainly in the playoff picture. However, if the Ravens enter the playoffs, there's a quarterback and a running back that are right at the level of Allen and Cook. So it's certainly a team I would prefer not to see in the playoff picture. The Panthers, I lived in Charlotte. You got to be excited for them. They've definitely exceeded expectations this season versus the Bucks, who completely fell off a cliff. Baker Mayfield was an MVP candidate in the first couple weeks of the season. So to see their fall from grace has certainly been something. I honestly think Carolina is going to win that game because momentum cannot be further in their favor. They're a very questionable team because Bryce Young will play completely mid one day and then play like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL the next week. You know, they play very sporadic. I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender. I think the NFC is definitely going to be a dogfight. The Seahawks is most likely going to be through Seattle. But it will be interesting to see. This is a year where everything is just kind of wide open, and there's no reason as to why the Buffalo Bills cannot win it all. But I am excited for January football. And now, since New Year's is around the corner, we also have the college football playoffs. Now we've gotten the Tulanes and the James Madisons out of the way, which all due respect to the smaller programs. I think in the current NIL era, it's really hard to build up a smaller program because, as you see, their coaches are leaving, the QBs are leaving, all their players are transferring. So I do respect what they did putting them in, but deep down you knew they had no shot. These quarterfinals are where I believe the college football playoffs really starts. So we have Miami versus Ohio State, Ole Miss versus Georgia, Oregon versus Texas Tech, and Bama versus Indiana. And honestly, even in these quarterfinals, I feel like there are heavy favorites. I like Ohio State, I like Georgia, I like Oregon, and I like the Hoosiers. I think ultimately it will be a repeat of the Big Ten championship. I think it's going to be Indiana versus Ohio State. But we'll see how this plays out. The college football playoffs will also give us a chance to look at Fernando Mendoza and look at Dante Moore, who are the projected top 2 quarterbacks of this upcoming draft. I think Fernando Mendoza has all the makings of a great NFL quarterback. He's certainly very intelligent. A lot of people would call him a dork. He has kind of like a Kirk Cousins, Andrew Luck type personality, but he really is tough as nails, and he has an insane football IQ, and he's leading Indiana, along with Kurt Signetti, who's an incredible coach, to their best football season in the school's history, period. and could close it off with both a Heisman and a national championship, which would be huge for his resume. But I do think Ohio State's overall team might be slightly better than Indiana's. Now, Indiana does have a couple other NFL players on the roster. I think Kamara's an NFL player. I think both Omar Cooper and Surratt are NFL players. But Ohio State, they have Julian Sayin, they have Caleb Downs, they have Carnell Tate, they have Caden Curry. I think they're just more of a juggernaut all around. But that being said, Indiana has beat them. But there's still a ways to go. I'm not penciling that in as the national championship because there is a reality where Georgia can make it. There is a reality where Oregon can make it. Bama might upset Indiana. But if Fernando Mendoza is able to close off this year with a Heisman and the national championship and is the number one pick in the draft, where do you think that cements his legacy as a college football player? There are only 17 players total to win the Heisman and the national championship in the same season. And there are only 3 players who have won the Heisman, the national championship, and become the first pick in the same season. So if Fernando Mendoza were to do that, he would join a short list with Joe Burrow, Cam Newton, and Jameis Winston. Now his stats pale in comparison to someone like Joe Burrow, but nonetheless, Fernando Mendoza has dominated college football this year. It's a weak quarterback class. I'll be honest. I honestly think beyond that top 2, there's a significant drop-off. But there's certainly something with Mendoza. He will certainly be remembered definitely in Bloomington. He started his career at Cal, and he transferred to where he had a chance to win it all. And he didn't do it at a school like Bama, a traditional school that you would associate. Obviously, Indiana's coming off of a great season with Curtis Rourke at quarterback and what Curt Cignetti has done to that program. But with him choosing Indiana, he's almost become the face of Indiana football in general, not just this year, but all time. Now, it wouldn't be a holiday episode if I didn't talk about Christmas Day basketball. The NFL has been trying to compete with NBA in recent years. Last year, they put together a hell of a presentation on Netflix. They had a halftime show from Beyonce. But Christmas Day belongs to the NBA, and that was especially the case this year. The NFL lined up 3 games, each of which had no playoff implications, and a backup quarterback playing. Josh Johnson, Max Brosmer, and Chris Oladokun were who NFL had as starting quarterbacks in the Christmas Day slot. Meanwhile, the NBA delivered us some classic games. The day started with Knicks versus Cavs, and this was the Tyler Kolek show. This was his coming out party. Kolek had 16 points and 9 assists on the game, a near double-double. Most importantly, and this specifically shows what he provided on the floor, a plus-minus of plus 24 in the fourth quarter. He made 3 threes. He attempted 3. He was 3 of 3 from 3 in the fourth quarter, as well as a monumental chase down. Technically, it was a block. It was really just a swipe on Donovan Mitchell that really shifted the game in the Knicks' favor. On a surface, it looked like a Cavs choke job, but this was really just a game of quarters. If we look at the box score here, the first quarter, Cleveland won 38-23. Second quarter, New York won it, 31-20. Third quarter, Cleveland won this one, 38-24. Fourth quarter, the Knicks won 42-28. They had a 42-point fourth quarter that was fueled mostly by Tyler Kolek. But it's not just Kolek that I have to give credit to for this game, because Jalen Brunson had his usual 34. We've come to expect it at this point because he's just such a generational scorer, especially at 6 feet tall. He did this on good efficiency too. Well, not great efficiency, but he was 6 of 12 from 3. Jordan Clarkson had 25 this game. He was also a massive part of that fourth quarter run. Mitch Robinson and Karl Anthony Towns combined for 27 rebounds in this game, as opposed to Mobley and Allen, who only combined for 17. And more than anything, I just have to give credit to Mike Brown and the way he's had the Knicks playing. They won the NBA Cup championship, and there's certainly an energy with this team. They're personally my pick to come out of the Eastern Conference, and having a finals game at Madison Square Garden would be electric. But the reason Mike Brown gets my credit specifically is because this kind of feels like a Mark Jackson to Steve Kerr type of move. Thibodeau got them there. He got them to be what they are now. But Mike Brown is going to get them to that big stage, that finals. I just have a feeling about it. And it's because guys like Tyler Kolek, Thibodeau wouldn't even play. He was so stingy with his rotation, so stingy with his minutes, that guys like Tyler Kolek are able to unlock their true potential and get more opportunities under a Mike Brown coach team. Even guys like Diawara and Ariel Hakporti, Tibbs wouldn't even dare play these people. They're getting solid minutes this year. There is something special about the Knicks team. Now, the Cavs, on the other hand, have been nothing less than disappointing. Now, Donovan Mitchell deserves the utmost credit for both this game and how he's playing on the season. This game, he played out of his mind with Coco Jones on the sideline. I mean, he was posterizing people. He was hitting threes from damn near half court. An incredible effort by Donovan Mitchell. And on the season, he's 6th in the NBA in scoring. There's been a huge scoring inflation in the NBA this year where 29.5 is only 6th in the league. But Donovan Mitchell is having an incredible year. However, the Cavs are not. And a lot of this is one because of injuries. But even with a fully healthy team, it feels like Donovan Mitchell has to do too much. It feels like too much of the burden is on him. They were able to find a nice rotation piece in Jalen Tyson. So I guess that's one of the more optimistic things going on in Cleveland right now. And it is a little bit more optimistic that they're healthy now. Garland, Allen, Mitchell, and Mobley are all healthy. So I think people may have overreacted a little bit to the Cavs. Where it stands, they're 18-16. But somewhat contradictory to my point, the Cavs were able to secure a huge win over the Spurs last night without a good Donovan Mitchell game. And that's extremely promising. The fact that Donovan Mitchell was able to have 10 points on 3 of 12 shooting, and they were still able to beat a great team like the Spurs, honestly could not be better news for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Last year, they had a historic season. They were the number 1 seed. And this year, it's been very bleak. Now, Darius Garland is certainly having an off year. As of recently, he's been playing better. He's gotten a few double-doubles in recent games. His shooting splits are still nowhere near where they need to be at. Lonzo Ball has some of the worst shooting splits in the league and has played himself out of the rotation. But the key to the Cavs is having a balanced attack. I think Mobley at this point you kind of know is just being the guy that gives you 18 and 8 and plays good defense. I don't know how many huge games he's really going to have, but as long as they're able to keep a balanced attack and not solely center the offense around Donovan Mitchell, I still think they have some of the better odds of the teams in the Eastern Conference. I don't think they could win an NBA championship, but I think there's still a shot for them to come out of the East. And I think people were kind of overreacting to their slow start and Darius Garland's slow start. And they weren't really factoring in the injury problems that this team really had. Now that I've mentioned the San Antonio Spurs, let's get into the second game of this NBA Christmas Day slate, where the Spurs beat the Thunder 117-102. Since I've last filmed, the Spurs have beat the Thunder 3 times. The Thunder only have 5 losses on the year, and 3 of them are to the Spurs. Now, when the Thunder started off 24-1, they looked like a juggernaut. They looked unbeatable, and to me, I thought it was almost inevitable that they would be the first repeat champion since the Warriors. But the Spurs completely mauled them. They make them look mentally weak and they make them look beatable. And I try to evaluate why it is the Spurs specifically that give them such a hard time, and I think I nailed it down. It really is about mental toughness. Wemby just has a mental toughness and advantage over this team that cannot be overstated, and Chet specifically. You could tell the fact that Wembanyama hates that he was ever even compared to Chet Holmgren as a prospect and as a player, and he proves that every time they play against each other. He will target him, he will, push off on him and do a windmill dunk. There is just something about this, and it's a rivalry that's so refreshing for the league. But it's not just Wembanyama, it's the entire Spurs team. And this team is been crafted and is being coached in a way that specifically makes them so well prepared to play against the Oklahoma City Thunder. They are not scared of them at all. They're not intimidated by them at all. In fact, they view themselves as the better team and have shown so in the 3 times that they have played each other. And honestly, if there is a playoff series between these two teams, there is no reason to why I think the Spurs wouldn't win it. And the reason for this is the Spurs, more than anybody, have the young, athletic guards that can compete with the personnel that OKC has, the 13 deep personnel that they have. But they just have these incredible, strong, shifty, tall guards, athletic guards that are able to hang with OKC's players on both ends. They are exceptional at reading OKC's defense. One thing the Thunder will do a lot, they love to play a physical defense and they love to get in passing lanes. One thing we saw whenever they play Denver is they like to get into the passing lanes so that the ball doesn't have any chance of getting into Jokic's hands at all. So when Jokic is in the high post, it won't be Chet that's guarding him. It will oftentimes be 2 or 3 people, most likely Caruso, Cason Wallace, Lou Dort, someone like that, that essentially play a safety role and prevent Jokic from getting the ball in the first place. When they do this against the Spurs, they often fail because they have a 7'4" alien with like a 30 feet wingspan. No one could get to the ball if Wemby's catching it all the way up here. So the Spurs, with the 3 guards that they have, will just get the ball to Wemby at the high post where he has that fadeaway in his arsenal where no one could challenge his catch point, but no one could challenge his release point. Or oftentimes they'll have one of their athletic guards or Keldon Johnson get into that dunker spot where Wemby could simply just make the pass. However, even when Wemby's out, you see that the Spurs still just dominate the Thunder. Mind you, Wembanyama was doing this on a minutes restriction. In all 3 of these games, he played under 30 minutes. And even when Luke Cornett's out there, it's rare that he's a net negative. They don't get played off the court when Wemby's out there because they play a brand of high IQ basketball. These crafty guards that I have, Harper, Castle, and Fox, it's a different brand of basketball than the high IQ play we saw of the Spurs dynasty, but it is still extremely high IQ basketball. And these guards, as I said, they're so crafty. They have shutters, they have hezzies, they have spin moves, and they are all extremely strong finishers where they could just take it at you, and all of them have good court vision. Stephon Castle specifically is an excellent defender, as well as Dylan Harper. And all 3 of them have excellent court vision. They just play team basketball. Stephon Castle specifically is a guy who has always played winning basketball going back to his days at UConn. They have the formula for their dynasty already set. It's not like the days where they're playing Jeremy Sohan at point guard. They know what they're doing now, and it shows because they beat OKC 3 times, and they're the 2nd seed in the West with only 9 losses and 23 wins. And mind you, I didn't even mention Devin Vassell, Harrison Barnes. Harrison Barnes and De'Aaron Fox just seem to have a chemistry. They played well together on Sacramento, and they played well together in San Antonio. Golden Johnson could give you 25 on any random night. Champagnie and Cornette are going to play within the system and with effort. And the scary part about this is probably the worst this Spurs team is going to be. And this isn't even Wemby at his peak yet. The Spurs are only going to get better, and they're only going to get scarier. And is something the league should really take notice to, because all this time we were worrying about OKC, but San Antonio is moving faster than even I expected. So the third game was between the Warriors and the Mavs. This was a pretty easy Warriors win. Where it stands, the Warriors are currently 8th in the West, and I kind of feel the same way I did about them going into the season, is that they do have a solid big two, but it's an aging big two. Curry's still an incredible player. He's still one of the best point guards in the league. He's still the best shooter of all time. That doesn't really go away with age. Jimmy Butler has certainly lost a step since his finals runs with the Heat, but he could still contribute. We could see what playoff Jimmy could do, but they really do not have a third option. Draymond Green is obviously old as well. Al Horford is aging. They're just an old team in general. And their young role players are just way too inconsistent. Podziemski is not ready to be a third offensive option on any team that wants to be taken serious as a contender. Pat Spencer had a nice 2 to 3 game run, but he's kind of come back down to earth. I mean, Will Richard is a second-round rookie. So Moody and Kuminga, you kind of know where they're at right now. Obviously, Kuminga and Kerr, as I mentioned in the Keon Coleman segment, have a little bit of a complicated relationship. So I think the Warriors, they're kind of done. I think there's not much hope left for the Warriors dynasty. I could be wrong, maybe I'm wrong, but I really just don't see it. I don't see it this year, and I don't see how they could reshape their team to where it could be any time in the next couple years. I don't know what Curry's timeline is. I don't know when he's going to retire, but I think the Warriors are pretty much done for. But they will still make the playoffs. They'll still make the playoffs. They might get a game out of the Thunder. Maybe. Heavy on the maybe. I think they're a little athletically outmatched. They certainly are outmatched in the age department compared to a young athletic team like the Thunder. The Spurs, maybe. Again, don't see it. So I think they would have to get up to at least the 6th seed for me to acknowledge them as a team that could win a playoff series. But then again, I don't think they could beat a healthy Denver team. The Rockets, there are just too many teams in the West for me to view the Warriors as a serious contender. Now, the team they played, the Mavericks, are in a weird position right now because of what Nico Harrison did. We're finally starting to see flashes of a superstar in Cooper Flag. We most notably saw it in his game against Denver, his 33-point game against Denver, but he looked good in the Warriors game too. There's certainly something there, but they're obviously in a transitioning stage, whereas if they would have kept Luka and kept that core around him, there is a chance they still could be competing for a championship right now. I think they certainly found something in Ryan Nembhard. I'm surprised that it took that long for them to even play him, but there's something with Ryan Nembhard for sure. And there's obviously something with Cooper Flag, but it's just a weird transition. It'll take time. It's not going to be immediate, but you're already seeing flashes with Cooper Flag. And I think he is kind of the rookie of the year at this point. Concanepple is pretty damn good, but I think Cooper Flag has superstar potential. And of course, with the Mavs, you obviously have to talk about Anthony Davis. it's kind of what you always expect from Anthony Davis, is just on and off injuries. He came back from injury. He had some huge games, some 30-point games against Denver and against New Orleans, and then he immediately went right back out again with a right adductor soreness. And you just wonder, like, why did you trade Luka Doncic for this guy? Because as people say, availability is the best ability, and the availability factor is just not there with Anthony Davis. And I don't think it ever will be. So his career arc is kind of sad, but at least he was able to win that championship with the Lakers. So you can't hold that against him, but he just has just such a problem with injuries. Like, he's just made of glass bones and paper skin at this point, and I honestly feel bad. But the fact that he was traded for Luka Doncic will forever go down in infamy. Klay Thompson, pretty washed at this point. Brandon Williams had a big game on Christmas, and Brandon Williams is kind of an old school guard because he is really shifty. He has great handles, but he can't really shoot. He's only shooting about 16.5% from three or something terrible like that. So it'll be interesting to see how long he stays around in the league, if he could adjust to this era, which really emphasizes the three-point shot. But there might be something there. Like I said, he has a crazy handle. He gives you effort on defense. He could score. He just can't really shoot. So we'll see if he develops a jump shot. We'll see how his career plays out. There might be something there. There might not be something there. He's someone with a very, like, wide range of probabilities of how his career could play out. Now, when we speak about players who can't shoot, it brings me, and also aging players and injured players, this is actually the perfect transition for the fourth game, where the Rockets completely obliterated the Lakers. Obliterated. So for the Rockets, this was marked as the return of Tari Eason, as well as the first game for Dorian Finney-Smith. Tari Eason was an absolute defensive menace in this game. 4 steals, 2 blocks. Dorian Finney-Smith basically just gave 13 minutes of cardio. It'll be interesting to see if he gets solid rotation minutes with how deep the Rockets roster is, especially in the wing department. This was a great game from Amen Thompson, and it was a scoring game. 26 points for Amen Thompson. He still can't shoot, but he has just an incredible blend of speed and athleticism that is hard to match, and obviously an insane defender. One thing besides the shot with Amen Thompson, he needs to do a better job at controlling his pace. He's so fast and so athletic that he sometimes has trouble slowing it down, or he'll take it too strong. Kind of like what we saw from Westbrook back in the day, or Westbrook now, honestly. But this was a great game. KD gave his usual 25 points on efficient scoring. Şengün had a decent game, not crazy for his standards. He's been dealing with a minor calf injury. I don't think it's that much of note. Austin Reeves on the other team, he's obviously dealing with a calf injury, and you could tell that he was not 100% in this game, and I don't think he's 100% at all. Luka Doncic, major turnover issues. And happy 41st birthday to LeBron, but LeBron is playing through sciatica and arthritis. He recently, not super recently, but he broke his 10-point streak, giving the game winner to Rui Hachimura. But since then, he's still been getting 20 a night. He's still averaging over 20 on the season, which as a 41-year-old with arthritis is unheard of. You have to give him his props. But you see how the Lakers play against a young athletic team like the Rockets, and you just kind of lose hope. They obviously have 3 insanely great players in Luka Doncic, LeBron James, and Austin Reeves. Not on the same level. Obviously, Luka's one of the best players in the world right now. LeBron's aging. Austin Reeves is coming up. But their roster is just not constructed well enough to win a championship. The role players are not who they need to be. It's not a well-rounded roster, especially for someone like Luka Doncic. So I don't really view them as serious contenders. We'll see. But games like this really make me lose hope in the Lakers. You can't really trust Rui Hachimura or Jared Vanderbilt or DeAndre Ayton. So for the Lakers to even have a puncher's chance at it, it would really require Luka Doncic to play out of his mind at a level that was even higher than his first finals appearance with the Mavs against the Celtics. It would have to be like an all-time great level performance. And the team would have to play in a way that I've rarely seen this year. And I just don't trust them to do it for a whole playoffs. The last game of the night, an overtime win for the Denver Nuggets against the Minnesota Timberwolves. This was an absolutely insane game and a perfect way to close off the Christmas Day slate. The final score was 142 to 138 in overtime. And as you could tell by the high score, there were some pretty great stat lines. Jamal Murray had 35, 2 and 10. Randall had 32 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 blocks. Anthony Edwards had 44 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals. But none were crazier than Jokic, who had 56, 16, and 15. This is the best player in the world. And unfortunately, he is out 4 weeks with a hyperextended left knee. I don't know how Denver is going to do it without him, because this is one of the best players I've ever seen on the basketball court. So in this game, Denver nearly blew it. In the fourth quarter, they took their foot off the pedal. They got outscored 37 to 23. And Anthony Edwards, to me, is the obvious clutch player of the year. It was shown in both this performance and his performance against the Thunder. He just has an innate ability to show up in big moments. Unfortunately, his game was cut short in overtime after he was ejected by Scott Foster. Scott Foster, some very questionable calls down the stretch. But nonetheless, Denver was able to get the victory off of an insane Jokic performance. And this is one of the best rivalries in the NBA. It's OKC San Antonio and Denver versus Minnesota. Every game these teams play against each other is guaranteed to be much-watched television. And I only hope they play each other in the playoffs. I do believe both of these teams are contenders. I believe Denver's especially a contender. However, how strong their supporting cast is will be entirely determined on how they play these next 4 weeks without Jokic. I don't know who they're going to start, because they already have faced injuries to Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown. So they've already gotten bit by the injury bug a little bit, but this is the worst one yet, especially with a player who's had a pretty healthy career so far in Jokic and was looking like the runaway MVP. After this game for the Wolves, they followed it up with a very disappointing loss against the Brooklyn Nets, but I still believe in them. Their point guard situation is a little bit questionable. Bones Highland has really stepped up getting minutes. Rob Dillingham, we really have yet to see. There might be some promise there, but I don't think Chris Finch really believes in him that much. Could Dante DiVincenzo start as the full-time point guard? We'll yet to see. Mike Conley is obviously aging and gets played off the court certain times. So we'll see how the Timberwolves are able to perform in the playoffs. But one thing's for sure is that Anthony Edwards is going to show up in big moments. With that concludes the holidays episode of City of Good Sports podcast. I hope you guys have a happy new year. I'll see you next year. I've been Richard Miller. Be good, do good, God bless, go Bills.